Yarden Ellis was already 5 minutes late and juggling a coffee cup, a crumpled math worksheet, and his 6-year-old daughter's pink backpack when he stumbled into the elementary school hallway. His shirt was wrinkled, his jaw unshaven, and his heart racing. "Come on, Junie," he muttered, holding her small hand as she skipped beside him in glittery sneakers. "Daddy, you're walking too fast." "I know, sweet pea, but I don't want you to miss the start of class. Again." He rounded the corner toward the classroom and nearly crashed into her. She was crouched near the door, a woman in a sleek navy pencil skirt and a white blouse that looked too expensive for a school. Her long, dark curls spilled past her shoulders, and she was talking gently to a little boy tying his shoe. She stood up at the exact moment Yarden tried to sidestep, and his coffee lid popped off, splattering lukewarm espresso across the floor, and a little onto her shoe. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," she said, brushing off her heel like it happened every day. Her voice was calm, warm. Her eyes, deep brown and focused, locked with his and made him forget every word in the English language for a second. "I thought teachers got some kind of armor for this kind of thing," he chuckled awkwardly. She blinked, confused. "I'm not." "Miss," a teacher's aide popped out of the classroom. "We're ready whenever you are, Ms. Arlen." Yarden turned back to the woman in front of him. "Oh, you're the new first-grade teacher." There was a pause. Her lips parted like she was about to correct him, but then, she didn't. "Something like that," she said simply, then knelt down to Junie. "Hi there, I'm Talia Arlen." Junie grinned. "I like your shoes." Yarden gave a sheepish laugh. "Sorry about earlier. I'm Yarden, this one's Junie. We're not exactly the most punctual team." "I can see that," she said with a small smile. But she didn't seem annoyed, just amused, and maybe a little curious. Talia watched them go, her heart doing something strange. She wasn't supposed to be in that hallway. She wasn't supposed to be talking to him. She wasn't even supposed to be in New York today. But when her driver took a wrong turn past her company's sponsored school, she'd asked him to stop, just for a minute. She hadn't expected to meet a struggling single dad with coffee stains and tired eyes who mistook her for his daughter's teacher. She also hadn't expected it to feel nice. Yarden worked double shifts at a neighborhood mechanic shop. Being a single dad wasn't just a full-time job, it was every job. He hadn't had a real date in 3 years, and his last splurge was a half-priced pizza night with Junie to celebrate her tying her shoes on her own. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman with the espresso-stained heel. He saw her again a week later. He was picking Junie up after school when she came down the sidewalk, her heels clicking like she walked through power meetings and not playgrounds. "Talia, right?" he asked, surprised. "You're still here. I thought teachers left earlier." She hesitated. "I'm visiting for a few weeks, helping out where I can." "Hi, that's cool. The kids like you." "They seem to." "Junie hasn't stopped talking about you. Says you smell like cookies and wear boss shoes." Talia laughed. "Well, I'll take that as a compliment." There was something about the way she looked at him, like he wasn't just another broke dad trying to hold it together. Like he wasn't invisible. He found himself saying, "Hey, can I buy you coffee to replace the one I spilled?" She tilted her head. "You're asking me out." He froze. "No, I mean yes, if that's okay." A pause, then she smiled. "Sure." The cafe was small and cozy, with mismatched mugs and a bell over the door. Yarden didn't pick it for romance. It was all he could afford without skipping lunch for a week. But Talia didn't seem to care. She asked about Junie, about his work, about the wrench in his back pocket and the grease under his nails, and he asked about her, where she was from, why she was in the city. She kept her answers vague but not cold, just careful. "I've been running my family business," she said, stirring her tea. It's a lot. I needed a break, so I came here. To visit an elementary school. It's a long story. He grinned. I've got time. She glanced at her watch. I don't, but maybe next time. You want there to be a next time. Her eyes flicked up to his. Don't you? He tried not to look stunned. Yeah, I do. Talia didn't tell him who she really was. Not yet. She didn't tell him that Arlen Industries was hers, that she was the CEO of one of the biggest tech firms in the country, that she'd built it from the ground up after inheriting a failing company at 24, that the school Junie attended was one of the dozens her company funded through a nationwide STEM initiative. She didn't tell him because for once, someone saw her as just a woman, not a headline, not a billionaire, not a name on a building. Just Talia. And she liked the way he looked at her like she was real. Miss Talia, Junie said one afternoon, kicking her legs on the swings, are you gonna marry my daddy? Talia blinked, choking on the apple juice Junie had insisted she share at the park. What? Daddy smiles bigger when you're around. He doesn't do that much. Talia laughed, caught off guard. Well, I like your daddy. Junie beamed. He likes you too. He sings in the car now. Talia's heart actually skipped. Does he? Yep, loud and off tune. Talia laughed again, but her heart was pulling her in a direction she hadn't anticipated. Later that night, Talia sat in her penthouse, looking out over the skyline she owned chunks of. Her phone buzzed with messages from board members. Her email had over 1,000 unread. Her assistant had flown back to San Francisco without her. And all she could think about was a mechanic with tired eyes and a kid who loved glitter. She couldn't stay hidden forever. But maybe she wasn't ready to walk away just yet. The first time Yarden brought Talia to the auto shop, she arrived in jeans, a soft gray sweater, and sneakers so white they made him nervous. He was elbow-deep in the engine of a Lexus that wouldn't stop overheating when she leaned against the doorway, watching with a quiet intensity that made his pulse trip. You actually fix cars with your hands? She asked, stepping forward carefully between oil stains and bolts scattered like breadcrumbs. No, he said, wiping his fingers on a rag. I whisper to the engine until it heals itself, very spiritual. She smiled, different from the careful curve she usually gave in public. This one reached her eyes. Let me guess, she said. You were one of those kids who took apart radios just to see how they worked. Close, he replied, tossing the rag aside. It was a blender. My mom didn't speak to me for a week. Talia wandered further in, brushing a finger along an old Mustang's hood. You ever wanted to do something else? Sure, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. Then I realized space doesn't have gravity or rent control so. She glanced at him, head tilted. You're funny. He shrugged. You're brave for wearing those shoes in here. I'm adaptable. You'd have to be, he said, looking at her longer than he meant to. The buzz of a drill sounded from the back of the shop, and Yarden broke the moment with a cough. You want something to drink? We've got bottled water and vending machine coffee that tastes like regret. I'll risk the water. He handed her a bottle from the mini fridge tucked behind the counter as she perched on a stool, crossing her ankles with practiced grace. He tried not to notice how unbothered she looked surrounded by grease and tools and the constant clang of impact wrenches. Why are you really here? He asked, folding his arms. I mean, you said you're helping out at the school, but you don't exactly scream PTA volunteer. She ran a finger along the condensation on the bottle, but didn't look away. I needed a break, from my life, from expectations. I wanted to be somewhere real. This real enough for you? He asked, jerking his head toward the busted radiator behind him. That depends, she said, eyes locking with his. Are you real, Yarden? He didn't answer right away. Too real. Some days I wish I wasn't. He didn't mean to say that. He didn't mean to let it out, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she said, what happened to Junie's mom? The question hung in the air, like the echo of a dropped wrench. She left, he said finally, when Junie was 2. She said she wasn't built for it. Motherhood, the struggle, me. I haven't heard from her since. Talia's gaze softened, but not with pity. That must have been hard. He exhaled slowly. It was worse for Junie. I can handle being left, but trying to explain that to a toddler, there's no manual for that. Talia nodded once, then reached inside her bag and pulled out a small notebook. I brought this for Junie, she said, offering it. She mentioned she likes drawing princesses who build things. He took it, flipping through the blank pages. You really listened to her. She's worth listening to. His throat tightened. You're too good to be real. Then maybe I'm not, she said lightly, but her gaze lingered. That night, after Junie fell asleep in her blanket fort with one sock halfway off, Yarden sat on the couch staring at the notebook. He didn't know why it mattered so much that someone had remembered what his daughter said in passing. But it did. The next time he saw Talia, they met at a small bookstore cafe Junie loved. Talia picked a table near the window, and Yarden arrived with a paper cup and a nervous laugh. She's with my neighbor for 2 hours, he said, sliding into the chair across from her. And she made me promise not to get married without her. Talia raised an eyebrow. Is that something I should worry about? He leaned back. Only if you're planning on proposing. She sipped her drink. Not today. He laughed, and it came out freer than it had in months. Do you ever think about what your life would have looked like if things had gone differently? She asked. Every day. And probably wouldn't be sitting here with you. She studied him for a moment. Do you regret it? He didn't have to think. No, Junie's the best thing I've ever done. Everything else can fall apart as long as she's okay. Talia looked down, then back up. You ever wish someone would fight for you the way you fight for her? He swallowed. Yeah, but I stopped expecting that a long time ago. Talia didn't reply. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his for a second longer than necessary. Yarden stared at her hand. You're hiding something. Her fingers froze. What makes you say that? You know a lot about a school you don't work at. You're always dressed like you stepped out of a campaign ad, and you never talk about your past. She pulled her hand back slowly. Would it change things if I told you? I don't know, he said, honest and careful. Depends on what it is. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, I want to keep seeing you, but when I tell you the truth, I need you to believe it's not part of some game. Then tell me when you're ready. He stood, tossing his cup in the bin and glancing back at her. But don't wait too long, Talia. Secrets don't stay buried forever. She watched him walk away, heart pounding. She hadn't told anyone her real name in weeks. Not since the press started hounding her over the board's latest vote. Not since her CFO accused her of misusing company funds money she'd funneled quietly into education programs like the one Junie benefited from. The media painted her as ruthless, cold, calculated. But Yarden looked at her like she was a person. And she wasn't ready to lose that, not yet. But a storm was coming, and she knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Yarden didn't notice the black town car until it pulled up to the curb beside his apartment building. He was locking up his toolbox at the side of the shop, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better days, when the sleek vehicle slowed and idled. The windows were tinted so dark he couldn't see inside, but the moment the door opened and a man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped out, his stomach dropped. Mr. Ellis, the man asked crisply. Yeah, Yarden said, wary. Can I help you? The man extended a card. Yarden glanced down at it and felt like the ground under him shifted. Talia Arlen, Chief Executive Officer, Arlen Industries. He looked up confused. What is this? I've been asked to escort you to a meeting, the man said. MS, Arlen would prefer to speak with you personally. Yarden's mind raced. The name, the logo, the school. Suddenly, everything began clicking into place. He didn't say anything, just nodded once, tossed the rag down, and told his coworker to let his neighbor know Junie would be a little late for pickup. The drive was quiet. Tension pressed on his chest like a weight that wouldn't lift. Buildings blurred past, but his thoughts were sharp, snapping into place. When they pulled into the underground garage of a glass tower he'd only ever seen in business articles, he knew. And it wasn't just a suspicion anymore. He knew exactly who she was. The elevator opened into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture so modern it looked like it belonged in a museum. And there she was, standing at the far end, her back to him, looking out over a skyline made of steel and dreams. She turned slowly, and the look on her face stopped him cold. I wanted to tell you, she said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. You had every chance, he said, stepping inside, hands clenched. Every single time we talked, you let me believe. I didn't lie, she said quickly. I just didn't tell you everything. He laughed once, sharp. That's not how honesty works. She took a step forward. Please, just let me explain. Explain what? That you're a billionaire CEO who decided to play teacher for kicks. That you walked into my life like it was some kind of experiment. That's not fair. No, his voice cracked. Because it sure feels like I was some kind of project. Poor mechanic with a cute kid. A nice distraction from boardrooms and private jets. Her face tightened. That's not what this was. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't even mean to meet you. But you did meet me, he said, eyes burning. And you let me fall for someone who doesn't exist. She took a breath. I'm still me, Yarden. You're not. You're someone with a driver and a skyline view and a company that owns half the city. I'm someone who clocks out at 6 and prays the rent doesn't go up. They stood in silence, the distance between them suddenly feeling like miles. I know I should have told you sooner, she said at last. But I didn't know how. Every time I tried, she stopped herself. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd walk away. You were right. He turned to leave. Wait, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't fall for you because you're different. I fell for you because you're real, because you love your daughter in a way I've never seen, because you look at people like they matter. He didn't turn back. I didn't want to be Talia Arlen with you, she said. I just wanted to be someone worth knowing. He hesitated at the elevator. You were. The doors shut between them. That night, Yarden sat on his couch, the apartment dark except for the glow of the TV playing cartoons Junie had left on. She was asleep in her room, hugging the notebook Talia had given her. He stared at the screen, not seeing it. His phone buzzed on the table. He didn't move. He wasn't hurt because she was rich. He was hurt because she'd kept it from him, because she'd made him feel like they were building something real, and now he didn't know what parts of it had ever been true. He didn't sleep. The next morning, he dropped Junie at school, avoiding the hallway where he'd first met her. By the time he got to the shop, a delivery truck was parked out front. Ellis, the driver asked, holding out a clipboard. Yeah. I've got a shipment for you, paid in full, special order. What are you talking about? The man gestured, and the back of the truck opened. Inside were cases of brand new equipment, hydraulic lifts, diagnostic scanners, tools he'd only seen in catalogs. His name was printed on every invoice. What the hell is this? Delivery from Arlen Industries, the driver said. Says here it's a strategic donation for local small business development. Yarden's chest tightened. He didn't want her charity. He didn't want anything from her. He told the driver to take it all back. That night, he picked Junie up and walked home in silence. She chattered beside him about her day, about a new art project and a boy who tried to eat glue. Yarden smiled where he could, but his mind wouldn't stop spinning. He tucked her in and sat by her bed, brushing her hair back. "Daddy," she murmured sleepily, "is Miss Talia gonna come back?" "I don't know," he whispered. "Go to sleep, baby." He turned off the light and stood in the hallway, staring at the dark. He hated how much he missed her. He hated that he still wanted to see her. He hated that when she stood in that office, asking him to believe she was real, part of him did. The next morning, there was a letter at his door. No envelope, just a handwritten note pressed beneath the welcome mat. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to believe that what I felt with you was the most honest thing I've ever known. Talia." Yarden pressed the paper in his hand and closed his eyes. He didn't know what he would do next. But he knew this wasn't over. 3 days passed. 3 long, restless days where Yarden didn't sleep more than a few hours at a time, where he almost called her twice and stopped himself both times. Where Junie kept asking when Talia would come by again, and he kept changing the subject. By the 4th day, a knock on his shop door came just after closing. He thought it was a customer needing a jump or a neighbor with car trouble. But when he opened the door, Talia was standing there not in her usual sleek outfits or heels, but in a windbreaker and jeans, her curls pulled back, her eyes steady. "I don't expect you to say anything," she said before he could open his mouth, "but I need you to hear this." He moved aside silently, and she stepped in. "I grew up with everything money could buy," she said, walking slowly around the shop. "But none of it taught me how to be honest with myself. I've spent years running a company, making decisions that affect thousands of people. But the second I met you, I started second-guessing everything." Yarden folded his arms, saying nothing. "I thought I was protecting what we had by keeping my world separate," she continued. "But I see now that I wasn't protecting anything. I was just scared, because you made me feel something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time." He leaned against the workbench, jaw tight. "You could have told me, you should have." "I know," she said. "I wanted to, but every time I looked at you, I felt like I got to be just a woman. Not a CEO, not a brand, not someone people pitch to or fear. You made me feel seen." "You made me feel like I was enough," he said, voice low. "And then I realized you'd been making a choice not to tell me the truth every time we were together." "I understand that," she said, "and I'm not here to ask for a clean slate. I'm here to fight for the chance to be in your life, your real life. Not because I feel guilty, because I love you." Yarden stared at her, his eyes unreadable. "You love me." "I do," she said simply. "And Junie, too. I'm not walking away unless you tell me to." The shop was quiet, the hum of the city muffled by thick walls and late-night calm. Yarden pushed off the bench and walked over to her. "If I say yes," he said slowly, "you don't get to go back to pretending. You don't get to shut me out when things get hard." "I won't," she said. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Okay." She blinked. "Okay." "There's nothing about this that's simple," he said, "but you showed up, that matters." She exhaled, a slow release of tension, and took his hand. Later that week, Yarden woke to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. Junie was sitting at the table, chocolate smeared on her chin, and Talia was pouring pancake batter into heart-shaped molds. The kitchen looked like a flour bomb had gone off, but neither of them seemed to care. You two planning to leave any breakfast for me? He asked, stepping in. Talia glanced over her shoulder, her smile brighter than the morning light. Depends. Can you flip a pancake without breaking it? He walked over and kissed her just once before grabbing the spatula. Watch and learn. That afternoon, they walked together through the neighborhood street fair. Junie insisted on face paint, cotton candy, and a helium balloon shaped like a narwhal. Yarden held her hand while Talia took pictures, careful not to miss a moment. A man from the community board stopped them near the booths. Yarden, you hear the shop's getting a grant? New equipment, city program. Some big donor pushed it through. Yarden looked at Talia, who simply raised an eyebrow. You're unbelievable, he whispered. It wasn't me, she said innocently. It was a very persuasive anonymous contributor. Junie tugged his arm. Daddy, can we get the big lemonade? Yarden nodded, and as they walked toward the stand, he looked over at Talia. You're really staying. She reached for his hand. I don't want to be anywhere else. 2 weeks later, the school hosted a community showcase for families. Yarden arrived with Junie in a dress she had insisted was grown up enough. And Talia met them at the entrance, her hair pulled back into a soft twist, a delicate chain around her neck that Junie had made from beads. You look like a princess, Junie whispered. Talia knelt down, so do you. When the principal introduced the donors for the STEM program, Yarden expected Talia to be called up. Instead, she sat beside him, letting others take the spotlight while she held his hand under the table. Why didn't you say anything? He asked quietly. It's not about me, she said. It's about what you and Junie deserve, and I want to be part of that, not the reason it gets overshadowed. After the event, as the sun dipped low and string lights blinked on along the schoolyard fence, Yarden pulled Talia aside near the playground. I had a ring once, he said. I bought it with savings and hope and a whole lot of naivete, but I never used it. Talia looked up at him. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't have that ring anymore, but I've got something better now, something real. And this time, I'm not asking for the future I thought I wanted. I'm asking for the one I didn't see coming. She blinked, tears gathering. You're serious? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, elegant band, nothing flashy, just honest. I know life's messy, he said. I know we've got work to do, but I want to do it with you, all of it. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. They kissed under the string lights while Junie spun in circles nearby, her balloon floating above her like a second moon. A month later, they were married in the park where Junie first asked if Talia was going to marry her daddy. It was small, just close friends, a few neighbors, and one extremely enthusiastic first grader who insisted on throwing flower petals and officiating with a plastic microphone. Talia wore a soft ivory dress with sleeves that fluttered in the breeze, and Yarden wore a suit that still smelled a little like motor oil, no matter how many times it had been dry cleaned. They exchanged vows written late at night, whispered promises about trust and honesty, about showing up even when it's hard. When they kissed, the crowd cheered, and Junie ran up between them, hugging their legs like she was trying to hold the whole thing together with her arms. Later, they danced in their little backyard, fairy lights strung between trees, music playing from a Bluetooth speaker with a scratchy signal. Talia looked up at the stars. I used to think love was about control, she said, about shaping your world so nothing could hurt you. And now, Yarden asked, swaying with her. Now, I think it's about letting someone walk in when you least expect it, she said, and choosing them anyway. He kissed the top of her head. I'm glad you chose me. I'm glad you let me. Above them, the stars blinked quietly, and somewhere nearby, Junie laughed, her voice bright and sure. They didn't need anything else. They had everything they'd never planned for and everything that mattered. Yarden adjusted the cuffs of his blazer, glancing around the ballroom with wary curiosity. The last time someone had offered to tailor a suit for him, it had been a joke from a friend at the shop. But this wasn't a joke. This was real. The gala shimmered with golden light. The chandeliers above cast flickering reflections across crystal glasses and polished floors. Waiters in black vests moved like clockwork, and the air buzzed with the low hum of orchestras, whispered ambition, and expensive perfume. He caught his reflection in one of the mirrored pillars and barely recognized the man staring back. But when he turned and saw Talia descending the staircase in a midnight blue gown that hugged her like moonlight, he forgot all about the room. "You clean up too well," she said, reaching him. He offered his arm, breath-catching. "You look like a walking secret." She leaned in, "And you're the only one who knows how to open me." They didn't belong here, not really. But they were here anyway together as guests of honor. The Arlen Foundation had chosen this night to announce a new education initiative, and Talia had insisted that Yarden be named as the program's technical consultant. Not because he was her husband, but because he was the right person for the job. "I've been dealing with people who pretend for a living," she whispered as they approached the podium. "But you've never once pretended to be anything but yourself. That's why I want you standing beside me." The crowd hushed as Talia stepped up to speak. Her voice carried with ease, poised but sincere. She talked about opportunity, about breaking cycles, about the power of belief in unlikely places. And then she did something no one expected. "I've spent years building a company," she said. "But the most important thing I've ever built is a life with people who remind me what all of this is for. So tonight, I'm not just proud to launch this initiative. I'm proud to share it with my husband, Yarden Ellis, who taught me the difference between success and purpose." The applause was instant, but Yarden barely heard it. His eyes were locked on hers. After the speech, people circled, offering congratulations, shaking hands, asking questions. But Talia kept her hand on his, grounding him. He saw her in her element, confident, gracious, brilliant, and for the first time, he didn't feel like he was watching from the sidelines. He felt like he was part of it. Later, when the ballroom emptied and the city glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Yarden found Talia on the balcony, her heels dangling from one hand, her bare feet resting on the cold stone. "You know I'm not good at these things," he said, stepping beside her. "You were perfect," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "I thought I might throw up half the time." "You didn't." "I almost did during your speech." She smiled and wrapped her arm around his waist. "You know, for a man who used to rebuild engines with duct tape and a prayer, you've come a long way." He leaned down and kissed her gently. "You're the reason I believe I could." In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Talia shifted her office to New York permanently. She stepped down from the day-to-day operations of Arlen Industries, naming a trusted COO from within and redirecting her focus toward the foundation. She didn't miss the boardrooms. She didn't miss the pressure. She missed nothing about the life that had once defined her. She had a new one now. Yarden's shop expanded, not because of the grant or the publicity, but because of the trust he'd built real people, real work. He took on 2 apprentices from the local technical college, started weekend classes for high schoolers, and finally let himself dream bigger than survival. Junie thrived. Her art was everywhere. The fridge, the walls, her dad's toolbox lid. She became the kind of kid who asked questions nobody knew how to answer and drew blueprints for treehouses with solar panels. One Saturday morning, she burst into the bedroom holding 2 pieces of paper. "Mom, Dad," she shouted, clambering onto the bed. "Guess what?" Talia blinked awake. "What, baby?" "I designed our dream house. Junie said, handing them the drawings, and already named all the rooms. Talia smiled, brushing hair from her daughter's face. Can we live in it too? Junie nodded, but only if you promise to stay married forever. Yarden pulled her into a hug. That was always the plan. They did build that house on a quiet hill just outside the city, with a view of the skyline and a backyard big enough for bonfires and fairy lights. They hosted dinners under the stars, danced barefoot on the grass, and grew a garden Junie proudly named the Backyard Jungle. Talia planted lavender, Yarden built a swing set, Junie painted the fence with galaxies. They fought sometimes, about dishes, about bedtimes, about whether or not Junie really needed an indoor tent with a telescope. But the fights never lasted long, because they remembered what it felt like to lose each other, and neither one was willing to forget that again. Years passed, and life shifted in small, beautiful ways. On their 5th anniversary, Yarden brought Talia back to the park where he'd proposed. She wore the same necklace from their wedding. He brought the same ring. "You still sure?" he asked, watching her trace the edge of the band with her thumb. "I've never been more." He kissed her hand, then her lips, still tasting like summer. They sat on the same bench as the sun dipped low, watching Junie run ahead with her sketchbook, drawing new worlds in the fading light. Yarden rested his arm across the back of the bench, Talia tucked against his side. "I used to think I had to choose between love and survival," he said. She looked up at him, and now I know the right love helps you survive anything. She nodded, her voice soft, and the right person reminds you of everything you could be. They didn't need the city skyline anymore to feel powerful. They had each other. They had home. And that was everything.